Hello guys, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel, Kilos and Cosplay. My name is Sydney, and today we are doing my first ever monthly reading log. It's something I plan to incorporate into my content every single month, so finally getting around to it. I feel like I kind of figured out my groove for it, so I'm ready to kind of get into it. Basically we have about 40-ish volumes that I have read this month, and I'm just gonna kind of go over them. I'll keep it as spoiler free as possible. I mean, I'm definitely not gonna give anything away, even with the volumes that may be further ahead than the first few, so I'll do my best to watch what I say. But I'm very excited to talk about a lot of these. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. Starting us off, we have the first volume of the daily reports about my witch senpai. So it's pretty much, it has the guy who is Masato, I believe, and then we also have the witch lady who is Suzuka. And basically it's just kind of like gonna turn into an office romance. It's funny, it's cute. It's pretty lighthearted. It does have some kind of serious moments, and you get to see some growth from our girl here, Shizuka. So very excited to read the next volume. It's just kind of like a romantic comedy. It's kind of lighthearted, and it's kind of a unique twist, I feel, on romance, or on office romances. So it's something I think is worth giving a shot. If you don't care about office romances or witches or anything, might not be for you. I wouldn't say it's like my top favorite like romance series by any means, but it's still cute. The only downside that it is like a $13 volume for being pretty small, which is pretty common, I feel, with 7Cs. But it's a cute read, something I would suggest looking into before purchasing, because I don't think it would be for everybody, but overall I enjoyed it, and I'm definitely going to be getting the second volume. And one of the shonen that I read this month is Kaiju number 8. It's the first volume, and the second volume only recently came out, but basically it does follow a guy who is actually in his 30s, so it's very rare, I feel, to see a protagonist basically be older than high school age. So that's a very unique concept, but pretty much he is kind of stuck and at his last point to take the test to become I think they're just kaiju killers, or the Japanese Defense Force, that's what it is. But basically they have to go around and kill the kaiju. So I mean, it's kind of like Jujutsu Kaisen in a way, but I believe everybody can see these kaiju who are wreaking havoc, but it's just like they have to go and fight and defend the town. And the main character, I believe the main character's name is Kifka? I feel like I'm butchering that. But pretty much he only gets one more chance to take this test. Otherwise he's kind of out of luck to get to fulfill his dream that he had with one of his childhood friends, who is already pretty high up in the ranks of being on the Japanese Defense Force. So his job is basically right now to clean up the aftermath of all of the kaiju that get killed, and he actually gets this kid who kind of becomes like his, not apprentice, but he ends up kind of guiding him. It's like maybe like a 17, 18-year-old kid who also wants the same thing as him, to join the Japanese Defense Force, so he figured this is a good way to it. But something weird happens when they both get injured, and Kifka ends up turning into a kaiju himself. So he has to kind of learn to keep that down low, because otherwise obviously he's gonna have to be killed. But I think it's gonna be an interesting one. I'm not gonna lie, the first bit of the series was kind of boring to me. It took me a little bit to pick it back up and kind of start reading through, because I think I got about maybe like 40-50 pages in, and I wasn't really capturing my attention. It only really started to capture my attention once they finally got to the actual test to take in order to become a Japanese Defense Force like person. So I will definitely keep going with it, but I will give a fair warning. I feel like it is kind of boring at first, but it definitely picks up, and once the action and everything starts, and you start meeting some other characters too, But overall, it's definitely one I think is worth giving a shot, and I think it will end up turning out really good. Just kind of bear with it. And then up next we have a Gentle Nobles vacation recommendation. I really have liked this first volume. It's really interesting. It's kind of isekai-esque as far as I can tell, but basically Hazel ends up in a different world, and he's just really like chill about it. For someone who just kind of gets thrown into a whole different place, he does not seem to care, but that just seems to be his personality, so he just quickly adapts and figures out what he wants to do next. Ends up meeting this guy, and genuinely cannot figure out or remember what his name is, but he is a very much a polar opposite of Liesel, and you kind of just get to see their friendship form. And it's interesting because this guy usually doesn't team up with anybody. He's very much a solo person, but he's really drawn to Liesel for some reason. So it has, in my opinion, more than friend BL undertones. I don't think it's actually ever going to turn into anything, but it definitely gives like more, I care more for you than a friend vibes, at least in my opinion. But it's really good, it's funny, and honestly a pretty unique turn on kind of isekai genre. So I would definitely recommend checking this out. I like it a lot, and I'm going to continue with the series. Alright, moving on, we have the Savior's Book Cafe Story in Another World. Again, another isekai one, but it's kind of more interesting. So if you have ever read this or watched The Saint Magic is Omnipotent, it's kind of that same vibe. So basically our main girl here, in her 30s, she gets taken into a world, or she gets kind of summoned and isekai'd into a different world where they're trying to find a magical savior. Her and somebody else also got there, but when she gets there, she's like, nah, I don't want this. I just want a chill life. And she ends up getting to have that wish granted, and so she basically just goes kind of on the outskirts of town. She's very strong and powerful, and she just kind of runs her own little book cafe where she makes food and just makes this place such a cozy thing. She thinks of every little detail, so anybody who comes, it's kind of like it'll heal them. Like all the food she makes will heal the people. She has a good, I think, kind of like almost barrier around her place. She keeps it nice and toasty, and she just has all the books that you'd ever think of stocked up. And one day the grand hero, kind of like one of the main knights, ends up stumbling upon her place, and he's also a bookworm too, so he ends up spending a lot of time there and getting to know her and seeing actually how powerful she is, even though she doesn't really realize it herself. And you kind of see a little bit of a romance and caring for each other play out. I feel like it's definitely going to be a very slow burn, but you do see the relationship start to develop here. And it gets left off on a cliffhanger, so I'm dying to get the second volume. I don't think it comes out anytime soon. I can't remember for sure. It's hard to keep track of everything that's coming out. But this is one that I will definitely be continuing. It's such a unique take, I feel, also on typical isekais of her just being like, hey, I don't want to be a savior. I just want to do my own thing. She still ends up being very powerful. So it'll be interesting to see what she gets to do with that and kind of see if she gets to keep living her cozy life, but I think she will. It's super cute, the art's adorable, and I love these two so much already, so can't wait for the next one. And again, it's great to have somebody who is not a high schooler, but actually someone who is in their 30s, who knows kind of what they want, get to be the actual protagonist of the story. So I would highly recommend this one. I think it's worth checking out. Alright, up next we have I Swear I Won't Bother You Again. I really like this story, but basically it follows, I think it's Violet, and she ends up getting a half-sister who kind of takes away everything that she has wanted in her life, such as like even her fiance, the life she planned to live, all is getting pulled away because of this girl. So one day she tries to kill her. So, and that's, I promise that's not a spoiler, it says it right here in the back. But she tries to kill her sister. And even though her sister like super nice, like, no, don't put her in jail, she still gets thrown in jail pretty much, I think, for the rest of her life. And basically one day she wakes up and she is taken back to the very first day that her sister ever arrived. So it's like she's getting a second chance at her life, and there she decides she doesn't want to mess with her sister anymore. She just wants to kind of fly under the radar and then go become a nun. She doesn't want anything to do with this royal life. She doesn't want anything to do with her sister. She just wants to exist and leave, pretty much, because she doesn't want to keep bothering people. But obviously through that, a lot of things start to change, and a lot of things that would have led to other events start getting kind of messed up. So if you've ever read like My Next Life as a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom, kind of that same vibe where it's kind of messing up the whole storyline, even though that's not what she wants to happen anymore. She doesn't want the life she dreamed of before. She wants a whole completely different thing, and it's a very interesting. I really like it. I will definitely be picking up the second volume. Cover's gorgeous, again, art's gorgeous. If you like kind of that princessy castle vibe, I think you'll like this series a lot. The only downside is the third volume does not come out until next year. So it's not something I feel like you have to rush to read, because you will only get stuck with 2 volumes until like basically 8 months from now. So not something to rush to read, but I still think it's a good one worth reading. I really enjoy it, and I'm definitely going to continue it. Alright, moving on, we have volume 1 of Rose and Blood. Basically this one is set around a girl named Stella who awakens in a gothic mansion, and she is saved by some gorgeous men. There's like 3 of them just kind of hanging around, but essentially she starts to notice things are kind of weird, things are kind of off, and she's basically living with a group of vampires. And I gotta say, this story was very generic, very predictable. The only thing I really liked was the world building and the art, because I mean they are very beautiful. All of them in the story, gorgeous. But it really does not stick out to me. This is not something I feel is really worth going out of your way to read. I think there's plenty of other vampire ones you could read if you really want them. The only, again, redeeming qualities, if you like the art, and the ending kind of intrigued me just enough that I will be continuing it. But this is not a series I recommend at all. It's so generic and basic. The only reason I'm continuing is because I like to give things a little bit more of a chance to see if we get any redemption or anything that's more interesting. And also I'm a completionist, so I will continue stories unless they're so ungodly bad. But I pretty much read and continue anything. This though, for sure, not something I recommend. I would definitely flip through, maybe when you're at the store if you're looking for it, or read it online. It's just not that great. This one is something that I would only suggest reading if you like vampires, honestly. But other than that, very bland. Up next we have the volume 5 of Those Not So Sweet Boys. I personally really enjoy this series. It basically follows a girl and 3 boys. 3 of them are which kind of live like a rich, lavish lifestyle, but they stop coming to school because they're kind of getting picked on, but people are trying to put the blame on them because they're kind of standoffish. They don't like to get to know people. So it ends up becoming this girl's job to go and get them to come to school again. Because she is very poor, so she works a part-time job, even though that's not technically allowed at her school. So in order for her to keep doing that, this is kind of what got assigned to her. And through that, you get to see like them start to come out of their shell, enjoy school a bit more, and obviously some relationships develop. This last volume, it is starting to get very interesting, and I feel like we're starting to get progress, but as soon as we start to get progress, of course something has to ruin it. So I'm very much dying to know what happened because of the end. I don't want to give anything away, but there's definitely going to be a lot of working through family issues to hopefully get back to the relationship I feel was starting to form. But overall, I really like the series. There's only 5 out. I think 6 is just now coming out this month. So it's a good one. I don't think there's going to be a ton of volumes in this series. So it's kind of a nice shorter read, but I really like this one. I think it's kind of unique. So I definitely recommend it. Moving on is a series I'm enjoying probably the most currently, and that is the Apothecary Diaries. I have read volumes 1 through 4. I actually only picked up the first volume because I like the art style, but once I read it, I immediately had to go out and get volumes 2 through 4. I love the series. I binged all the volumes like as soon as I could. They're gorgeous. I mean, you can't tell me this art is not just absolutely beautiful, and I love the concept of this. So basically you have our main girl here, and she is a young woman that is an apothecary, but she ends up getting kind of stuck working as a lowly servant in the palace. But there's a bunch of like curses and mysterious things going around with the ladies that are married, I'm not 100% sure if it is a marriage, to basically the ruler. And some of them were getting really sick, and a couple of them had babies, and the babies were sick and practically dying. So they're kind of trying to figure out what would be the cause of this. And basically she goes and tries to identify what is causing all these problems. And she's able to. And from there she starts kind of attracting the attention, and she gets to move up in the world to become a lady in waiting. And she's also the poison food test taster for one of the main ladies. I really like all the main ladies. Like, you start to get to know them and see them more, and they're a lot more chill and laid back than I think you'd expect. I really like the series. There's also a guy in here, his name is Jinshi, and I don't know what exactly his position is, but he is higher up in there, and he's kind of a womanizer, but he starts kind of getting interested in her because she's very blunt and unique, and like not at all interested in love and romance and, you know, any of that stuff. She just wants to make her medicines and taste poisons. That's her kind of main objective, and kind of why she's like willing to keep moving up, so she has more access to those things. I love this series so much. It is so funny and so cute, and I feel like you kind of learn some things throughout it too, but it's such a unique like one in my opinion, and it's so good. Please check it out if you haven't. It is one that I think a lot of people would enjoy no matter what, and the art is beautiful. So definitely highly recommend this one. It is one of my favorites. Up next, I have the first 2 volumes of I Can't Stop Cursing You. Basically it's kind of like each volume follows different people for the story. You have your main ones, obviously. You have Sayama, who is a curse breaker. So in this world, mysterious things start to happen, and it's his job to kind of help and figure out who's causing this and how they can stop it. So you have to play a lot of mind games in this, and it's super good though. I was kind of a little bored at first, but it started to grab my attention. I actually really like Sayama. He's very demented and twisted, but in a very almost justified and just like a very justice-y way, if that makes sense. But he is very unique, I feel, for a protagonist. And again, it's such a mind game of trying to figure out what's happening and how they can identify basically the culprit of and why are they doing it. And each curse is unique and different, so how things can happen vary by whoever has summoned and or whoever has pretty much obtained this curse. So that's why I really like it. Like, you're not stuck with the same story, and there's always something different. So these 2 volumes have 2 different people who are the culprit, and it's just such like you're trying to play the game of figuring out what's going on and what's causing this too. So if you like that kind of mystery element of things with a psycho lead, I would definitely recommend this one. It's super good. Moving on, we have the first 2 volumes of The King's Beast. This is one, sorry, let me hold that this way. This is one that these pages, or these manga, actually connect, and they were released simultaneously in Japan. So it is one that I would recommend getting the first couple volumes because I feel they kind of link together as one in a way. But basically it follows an Ajin who is seeking out revenge for her brother who was killed, and it was just pretty much covered up. Nobody wants to like talk about it or tell anybody what happened. So she ends up pretending to be a male because apparently males are the only ones that can actually serve the like princes and stuff in the palace. So just pretend to be a male who is powerful enough to be worthy of that position, and it's her just trying to figure out what happened and her connecting with the fourth prince. Basically, as far as she believes that the prince is the reason her brother was killed. So she is as angry as can be, understandable. And plus Ajin are basically deemed as lower than humans, so nobody cares when they pass away, nobody grieves for them, nobody gives it a second thought. They're the first to be blamed for everything, and without question they will be punished even if it was something that they didn't do. The women Ajin are basically put only as prostitutes until they are too old, and then they are pretty much just subjected to cleaning. So they really don't get to live a good life. She makes her way into the palace and she kind of sees that this prince is definitely different. So I don't want to give anything else away, but overall this is such a good story. I think it has great world building and I think the art's beautiful. I personally like the kind of chibi comedic relief throughout it. I can definitely see why people would think this is stereotypical, because I have seen some people, like some of my mutuals on TikTok, say that it's kind of just generic. It's set in the same world of the Dawn of the Arcade, so if you've read that and like that, you will probably also enjoy this one as well. I personally haven't read that one yet myself, but I love this. I think it's beautiful, the art is super cool, and I personally really think it's a unique concept. But it is something that I think some people aren't a huge fan of, so I would definitely recommend flipping through it if you're ever at a bookstore or reading it online. But personally, it's one that I am enjoying a lot, and I've already purchased like the next few volumes and have the rest on pre-order, so I'm going to continue the story for sure. Alright, moving on, we have the first 2 volumes of Prince Freya. Basically, it is a girl named Freya who ends up having to pretend to be the prince that was killed by poison, and if she doesn't, it's going to cause their town to pretty much go into chaos, and I feel like it's just going to turn into a massive war. So in order to kind of protect the peace, she ends up kind of taking that role. I think this is a very unique story. I love the concept of her having to step up, and because she's kind of like also like a crybaby and who always has to be protected, so seeing her have to really step up is very cool. You'll get to see a lot of growth and development, a lot of strength too, which I think is awesome. I love when like it's kind of almost like that Yona of the Dawn, where it's like she starts out very whiny and then ends up being very strong. And she also has a couple guys that she grew up with and they're kind of in love with her. But she has always been protected by them, so now she feels like it's kind of her turn to kind of get into protecting them too, because they are actually knights of the palace that she's going to be pretending to be the prince of. But I think it's a really unique concept. I really like everyone in here. Again, this might not be something for everybody, so I would definitely recommend flipping through it, but I feel if you like Yona of the Dawn, you'll like this. That's like probably the best comparison I can give, but I really like this. I already have the 3rd volume that I'm going to probably read tonight, and I personally would recommend it myself, but again, I can also see how this might not be everybody's favorite, so just a fair warning on that. Alright, moving on. We have the first volume of Hat Atelier. I can talk, I promise. Basically, this is about a girl named Coco who really is interested in magic, and she actually even has her own magic book that somebody sold to her in a back alley. But she's really interested in the concept, but in this world they don't actually just have magic just shown to everybody. It's done kind of secretive, like they have to do the base part and then they can kind of go and do it in front of everyone. But I think that's actually very unique, that in this world magic is something that is kept kind of hush hush, because they don't want everyone to realize that it is potentially possible for everybody to learn it, because they could definitely use it for evil. So that's why they kind of keep it like on the down low. One day Coco ends up actually seeing somebody perform magic, so she goes and tries it herself, ends up summoning kind of something bad and she causes some not great things to happen. But she ends up getting taken away by an apprentice who is going to kind of help her hone into her skills, and also they are interested in her because she is a lead into somebody that they have been trying to track down. So you kind of get to learn more about that, but it is super cool. The world building in this is amazing. The art, amazing. And I think it's honestly a really unique story despite being just, you know, typical magic. I really like it. I'm definitely going to be continuing this series. I actually already have the next 2 volumes, so I can't wait to get into that. But this one is something that I highly recommend everybody give it a shot. It's crazy that it's only a manga and it already has a couple figures out, and I'm kicking myself so much for not getting them when I had the chance, because their aftermarket's horrible. And it sucks because I really do like the figures, and now I hate that I had the chance to have them and I didn't get them. But I didn't know I was going to love the story as much as I did, so that really sucks. But I'm hoping maybe it'll get an anime adaptation and we'll possibly get a re-release, because, you know, I don't think too many people were into it at the time. So I highly recommend this though, but it sucks for us figure collectors who like things of stories that we enjoy. But what are the odds, you know? Right, moving on. We actually have a big chunk of a series that I've read, and I have Night of the Ice 3 through 9. I've really been enjoying the story, I mean, obviously. But this is such a good series. If you like Yuri on Ice, I think you'll love this. This is kind of like the less fruity version of Yuri on Ice, but I love Yuri on Ice anyways. So this is something that I think is so good. It's so funny. It's just, again, another type of ice skating manga, but you get to see kind of like a childhood friends to lovers situation happen, and honestly it's just really suspenseful at the same time. But it's just a beautiful manga that has so many great characters in it. I feel like there's like not much I can say that won't give away like spoilers, so I'll probably just leave it as that. The best thing I again can leave you with, I know I keep saying it, but if you like Yuri on Ice, you'll love this. Super good. Alright, moving on, we have one of my other favorite series that's currently ongoing. That is A Man and His Cat. I have read volume 1, and this is the most wholesome thing I've ever read in my whole life. It almost had me crying just because it's so sweet, and it has a few like sad moments, but overall this is such a good read. Basically it's about an older gentleman who has lost his wife, and you know, his kids have already moved out, so he is looking kind of to adopt a cat and to kind of fulfill the wish that him and his wife had once they were kind of considering getting a cat together, you know, since their kids were gone. So he goes and he actually sees a cat that everybody is looking over. They don't think he's cute. He keeps getting like his price taken down and still nobody wants to get him. This guy, he just falls in love with him right away. And it's basically getting to see their life. And if you are a cat owner and you love cats, this is so relatable. It's so funny. It has so many moments in it that, you know, you experience as a cat owner. So getting to kind of see that play out in a manga is just the sweetest thing. I'm not gonna lie, the main guy in here, he's maybe an older man, but he's pretty attractive. But anyways, this is one that I highly recommend for basically anybody. If you're looking for just something super sweet, I mean, if you hate cats, probably won't like it, but this is such a good read. Definitely check it out. The next series that I've been reading and really enjoying is Hell's Paradise. I read volumes 1 through 4. I'm at a standstill now because I don't have the 5th volume, so hopefully Right Stuff sends that soon. But basically, this story follows the main character is Gabamaru, and he is essentially a really skilled killer, and he ends up getting put onto a death sentence. So him and a bunch of other people that have been set up onto a death sentence get kind of summoned and get a chance to kind of revoke that, but they pretty much have to like battle each other to get down to about 6 people to get sent to an island to explore this basically unknown territory that keeps killing people that they send out there, and they want to know why, like what's going on with that. So kind of you get to see a really cool world building and a lot of gore, very unique, kind of almost like religious type content in here too. But this is such a good series. I will say it's a little slow in the beginning, but it's ending up to be one of my favorites, and there's a lot of really cool people in here. So this is something I definitely would highly recommend. Also, with an anime coming out, I'd try to snag these up before it gets too popular. So definitely check it out. And then up next we have 1 volume of Wake Up Sleeping Beauty. Pretty much it follows a high schooler named Masato, and he is hardworking and he wants to prove that he can have a job and also go to school because he wants to, I think, run his dad's business one day. But he ends up working at as a cleaner at this like very rich house, and there is this girl that's kind of a recluse who is kind of summoned away from the house and away from everybody because she's sick. So, and one day he ends up kind of going over there and he meets her by accident. He kind of falls like for her pretty quickly, and they kind of have a good time, but then the next time he meets her, she doesn't remember him. So this is a kind of an interesting story of somebody with kind of multiple personalities, but she technically doesn't have that, and I don't want to give away why she doesn't have that, but it's kind of unique and kind of mysterious and creepy in a way, despite how it looks. But I'm really liking it. It's definitely a series I want to keep continuing with. If you like mysteries and kind of like a unique, scary vibe in a way, I would definitely check this out. Moving on, we have I think it's just a single one-shot volume of Haru's Curse. Basically follows the girl Natsumi who had a sister Haru who passed away. And at the funeral, she ends up talking to her sister's fiance, and they end up kind of deciding to date, but under one circumstance. He has to take her everywhere he took her sister to, and then after that, they're gonna call it quits. Kind of throughout it, you get to learn more about Natsumi, also the fiance, and kind of seeing that he's also kind of in a twisted, toxic place, the same as the sister, so they kind of connect and heal each other in a way. The sister constantly feels guilty that, you know, she's spending time with her sister's fiance, and feelings are starting to develop. This is like a very unique concept, and since it's just a one-shot, I don't want to give too much away. But if you like kind of the, I guess, twisted, guilty stories, this is a really good one. And honestly, it's a pretty unique read. I would definitely recommend it. It's not something I think is like my favorite read ever, but I would definitely check it out. Moving on, we have volumes 2 and 3 of My Dress Up Darling. If you have watched the anime this season and you love it, I highly recommend the manga, because I think there's it's pretty much does follow it pretty well, but it is missing a few things. But this is such a great series. Basically, we have Gojo, who is kind of like doesn't really have friends, kind of a more loner kid who just wants to paint like these dolls that is kind of his like his grandpa's kind of business. One day Marin and him kind of connect, and she thinks like his hobby's really cool, and she wants to cosplay, but she can't sew, so she kind of talks to him about making her cosplays. So through that, you get to see a great kind of like very slow burn relationship develop, but it is such a cute concept. Marin is best girl. It is very fan servicey, but I mean, it is mature. It's rated mature for that reason. So it's like 17 plus, I think, 16, 17 plus. So no, you are getting a lot of fan service, but it's super funny and really cute. And I really enjoy this series. I think it's such a cool concept and I love it. So I personally recommend it, but it's not for everybody, especially if you don't like fan service. So, and moving on to the BL portion, we have, starting us off, our dining table. Such a good series. I love it so much. It is the most wholesome thing I've ever read, but basically it goes around, these two are brothers, the younger boy and the blonde-haired kid, and they end up kind of meeting this like lonely office worker who doesn't really have a family, doesn't really do much outside of working, and he's kind of a loner, so they kind of make a connection. Because this kid tries to like eat the lunch from that guy, and he ends up really liking the rice ball that he made, so he goes up to him and he's like, hey, my younger brother really likes that, will you show us how you made it? So it's kind of getting to see a really cute connection between people and food and how that can bring everyone together. But basically this is such a sweet and wholesome series. If you're looking for something with no smut in it whatsoever, this is definitely the best read for you. It's so cute. I can't recommend it enough. I'd love to get like a spin-off or something because I'd love to know more about all of them because it's just precious. And then up next we have Changed World Volume 1. If you have read Sayonara Game and you like that couple, this is kind of a continuation of that, so you can kind of get to see more of that happening. I don't want to go really too much into it. I would definitely recommend reading Sayonara Game and then just going to this, because this is just kind of them navigating their relationship, and obviously a little drama ensues. So again, Sayonara Game, super good. I'm trying to figure out how to describe that one, but it's basically people that were, there's like a couple guys that were on the high school baseball team, I believe it was baseball, and one of the guys was really always looked up to this other guy who was very cheerful and happy, and he ends up tutoring his sister, and that's how they kind of reconnect. So definitely check that out first, and if you liked it, move on to this one. And then up next we have Madk or M-A-D-K. I don't know how to say, I don't know what's the exact pronunciation or however you say it. This one's weird. This is not something I would recommend to everybody. It's very gory, but basically it follows Mikado, who is kind of an outcast to society because he is into some weird stuff. And basically he has a very interesting kink that he wants to be able to eat demons. That's what really gets him going. So one day he's messing around with some, summoning things. He ends up summoning a pretty powerful demon who agrees to grant his wish in exchange for basically killing him. And he's like, perfect, this is what I wanted. So you get to kind of see that play out, and then he gets taken into the demon world and actually gets kind of transformed into a demon himself. So he kind of gets to keep living out his fantasies in a way, but it's also a very messed up and twisted kind of story. This is, again, it's not something I would recommend for everybody. If you like gore and weirdness, sure. If you want cute, no. I cannot with my whole heart recommend this to everybody because it's even almost a little too much for me at times. And I read pretty much everything, like not a lot bothers me. But it's unique, that's for sure. There's nothing like this at all. The art is really unique and kind of goes really well with the story. So I wouldn't say I recommend this per se, but if you like weirdness, you'll like this. Moving on, we have There Are Things I Cannot Tell You. It is a single shot. It basically follows two, I think just high school, or two like childhood friends, and then they kind of end up having a rift and separating a bit after something kind of awkward happens. But through it you kind of get to see They're like, it was just a lot of big miscommunication, and you know, one person thinking they're trying to protect the other when that's really not the case. So you kind of get to see that relationship happen. There's certain times that I was like getting teary-eyed, but then it would immediately get spicy, so I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have time to cry. But I really enjoyed this one. I think it's such a cool, like, different concept, and I think it wraps up really well for being a single shot. I would highly recommend. Again, spicy scenes, so if you don't like that, probably not gonna enjoy this one, but this one is definitely kind of like that bittersweet type of story, so I really liked it though. We have volumes 2 and 3 of Cherry Magic. I love the series so much. I cannot recommend it enough. It's probably becoming one of my top like favorite BLs. But here you have, you know, a 30-year-old office worker who has never had any romantic relationships with anybody. And because of that, he ends up having magic powers one day where if he touches somebody, he can hear their inner thoughts. And that's how he finds out that probably one of the more popular, very charismatic, hardworking, and very well-liked co-worker has feelings for him. So it's kind of getting to explore that and kind of see how their relationship develops. He's not sure if he even really like wants to, but this is so sweet and so funny. So far nothing really spicy has happened. Can't guarantee that it won't, but so far nothing. I just really like this. It's super funny, and I think it's such a funny concept too. Again, this is probably one of my favorites. I would highly recommend you give it a go if you do like BL. I think it's a great little office place romance too. So it's just I just love it so much. It has me like dying laughing at times, so definitely check it out. Alright guys, that is all I have for you today. I hope you liked this. I hope I did a good enough job kind of explaining some of the stories without giving away too much or rambling too much, but you know. So yes, basically, quick rundown. I do recommend almost everything in here except for the few things. But let me know what you guys read this month, or if any of these series you also like, or if you even want more like detail about them. I would be glad to give that to you, so just let me know in the comments, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.